The blockchain is certainly one of the trendiest technologies. It's also potentially one of the most disruptive technologies. And, of course, it's one of the most misunderstood technologies for business technology decision makers. For Tech Republic and ZDNet, I'm Dan Patterson with Brian Bellenhorp to discuss 2018's top blockchain predictions. Brian, thanks much for joining us today. You guys are a part of the Linux Foundation, and before we talk about our predictions, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your relationship with the Linux Foundation.
Sure. So the Linux Foundation is about a 15-year-old consortium of developers and companies working together to build initially just the Linux operating system and the Linux commercial ecosystem, but beyond that, increasingly to cloud computing, software-defined networking, drones and AI, and now to blockchain technology.
And what is the Linux Foundation and Hyperledger's relationship with blockchain development?
Right. So we felt that when we launched the Hyperledger project 2 years ago, that there were more than enough people and organizations focused on promoting cryptocurrencies, right? You know, the Bitcoin Foundation, the Ethereum Foundation. What was needed was to organize some engineering and some focus around the layer below cryptocurrencies, this thing called the distributed ledger, right? How do we piece these together, and are there actually some unique problems that we can solve with this special kind of technology, of which currencies are one, but could we also do digital identity? Could we do other types of banking networks and settlement networks? Could we reform how government services were delivered, or even healthcare services? And so for the last 2 years, we've been building a collection of technologies designed to go and implement this new kind of thing.
So that dovetails very nicely with our topic today. As the standards are kind of figured out, and as business and technologists kind of figure out practical uses for the blockchain, new companies and new innovations emerge. So I wonder if you could help us understand some of the FUD and some of the realistic predictions or forecasts for 2018.
Well, while a lot of the world has been, paying attention to, you could even say, distracted by coins, right? By the price of Bitcoin, the price of, this idea of a crypto anarchist kind of point of world where we don't need banks, we don't need governments. A lot of the rest of us have been quietly and silently working behind the scenes to build technologies that can help solve some very pragmatic problems out there. Problems around the cost and the delay involved in wiring money from one bank to another, or problems in building national ID systems without creating central organizations that end up knowing everything about you, right? So at Hyperledger, we've been focusing on this plumbing, right? This underlying technology that, just like with the internet today, and the web infrastructure and other things, this is plumbing, right? This is stuff that should just work for us. That for companies, none of them compete on the quality of their plumbing, right? But they all need that in order to provide their essential products and services on top. And with these technologies, we can solve what is not just a data management problem, but is a problem of trust, right? Is a problem with, today we have to trust Google or Facebook or Twitter with private data, with being at the center of our digital ecosystems. And that might be okay for social media, but for financial transactions, for the way that governments work, for our health data, that's simply not good enough.
Yeah, so trustless or open ledger technology that doesn't require two entities to interact or develop a traditional contract is something that has led to the rise of smart contracts. And I wonder if you could explain why trust, or the lack of trust, is so important in blockchain.
So take, for example, one of the real applications for this that is live today, which is with the diamond supply chain. So there's been a lot of focus on keeping conflict diamonds out of the supply chain for 20 years. But the process they have in place involves lots of stamps, lots of filing of paperwork that, frankly, was hard to trust. It was very easy to forge that paperwork, and really hard, especially if you're a buyer at the end of this chain, to try to understand, what do these stamps on this paperwork mean? Can I actually trust it came out of the ground where it claimed to, or went through the right set of hands? And so using a distributed ledger, that industry is recording events to this ledger, recording where it came out of the ground, where it was handed off, in a way that is uniquely tied to each diamond, and giving very high integrity to any claim from one party to another that this diamond actually is what we claim that it is. And this means we don't have to trust a central organization to tell us that this diamond makes sense. The trust is built up by digital signatures, by cryptography, by mathematics, but by building a database essentially that is decentralized and verified, and where the integrity of that is clear. And that's where this can be a solution to some really otherwise very intractable problems.
So when we say decentralized, there is almost a callback to the early days of the internet, which is particularly germane now as we are having net neutrality fights. When we look at the blockchain and decentralization going forward, we look at 2018 and beyond, what are the best ways for business to take advantage of technology that is, it's so hard for us to say, well, we're going to see X, Y, and Z with blockchain, but for business to take advantage of that open, distributed nature of the technology?
And distributed might even be the best word to use here. So the internet itself is really not decentralized at its heart, but it has a characteristic I've been starting to call minimum viable centralization, right? And this is characterized by ICANN, for example, the Internet Consortium for Assigned Names and Numbers, which runs the DNS system at a very top level, but depends upon domain name registrars and all these other organizations to actually implement, right? So imagine a structure like that, where you have a very lightweight consortium at the center of a marketplace, of a transaction network, trying to help everybody work together, but not trying to play God at that center of that universe. And the blockchains are really a way to implement that at a technical level. And so what we've been seeing, any example anybody can give you where things are live today, like the diamond supply chain, there are these lightweight organizations that act as standards bodies, if you will, or help the businesses in that ecosystem understand how to interact with each other, and who can coordinate their activities to bring them onto this ledger. But then the trust is built by everybody exchanging transactions and working together on that. So this past year, we've seen quite a few of these light up in the financial services sector, in the identity space, in the supply chain sector. And many of these are pilots that have been starting to prove their merit. And I think 2018 will be a time where many of those go into production, and we see hundreds of more pilots launched like this.
Brian Behlendorf, Hyperledger, those are really important predictions for 2018. Where are we in 36 months or 5 years with blockchain technology?
Well, I think we won't have to have a kind of the blockchain 101, what is the blockchain types of talks. Like, just as probably about 1998, we were able to stop having the what is the internet kind of conversations or topics. And we'll start to really figure out where the value is. And there'll be some value certainly in the cryptocurrencies. I think they do solve a pretty unique role. But I think most of the transactions of the world, most of the real business of the world that gets done, will be done over these permission ledgers, will be done using distributed ledger systems that don't require a cryptocurrency at their heart. And through that, they're just much more efficient and much more direct, and where the governance model is understood. And over the next 3 years, we're going to see this actually become a bit more boring, I think, as it becomes plumbing, as it becomes just another layer of the internet. And if we do our job right, hundreds of thousands of developers over the next few years will understand how to work with these tools, and the business community will start to understand how to incorporate it into their day-to-day life.